Hello and welcome to episode 5A.02, the July 8th, 2026 Mini02 edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat, the podcast that covers the arts in northern Chautauqua County, sponsored by the 1891 Fredonia Opera House. My name is Tom Laughlin, and I'm your host as we bring you news and information about arts events at the Opera House and around the region, including interviews with artists and creators across the county. This is the second of three mini editions we'll be releasing over the summer. July brings a couple of events we'd like to bring to your attention. The first being an evening with Dunkirk native Mark Brazill, who was the co-creator, writer, and producer of the Fox television series hit That 70s Show. He has called it a love letter to Dunkirk, and I got the chance to talk to him about the creation of the show and its connections to his teenage years growing up in Dunkirk. I have a very interesting guest with me right now who's going to be coming to the 1891 Fredonia Opera House to perform, do a show, do a little presentation about his work in Hollywood. His name is Mark Brazill. He is the producer of the show That 70s Show, which was very popular in the 1990s. As a matter of fact, it ran from 1999 to 2006. 200 episodes he produced and wrote. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for being here. Let's talk a little bit about the first thing I would like to talk about, and we'll get into a couple of things here. But the first thing I'd like to talk about is to give the audiences a kind of a little idea. We're actually recording this at a time where things are being sketched out. We know you're coming to the Opera House, but you're still sketching out a few things. But I want to give the audience a little bit of an idea of what kind of program you're getting ready to present to them. So let's start with that first, and then we'll go backwards.
Well, I've never really done much about what 70s was and how it happened. I can remember they asked me to do the commentary on the videos when they released them on DVD. For the kids, DVDs are little discs that you play. And I wasn't comfortable with that because I felt like the director, who really, David Trainer, he was my partner. He did every episode except the pilot, which is unheard of. And I said, well, what cast members are going to do the commentary and who's all gonna? And they said, no, nobody, just you. And so I said, So I didn't do that, and I don't regret that. I'd rather not go through 200 episodes sitting there. Yeah, this the one where I think Mila wore jeans in this one. I don't, I was not. I mean, I remember all the stuff, but a lot of it, those kids were kids, and you don't reveal a lot of their secrets and their personal stuff and what happened because it's, hopefully they won't do that about me.
Mhm.
And so I really want to get into the weeds as far as like what happened and how it was very much about Dunkirk and Fredonia. They made me put it in Wisconsin because they said, well, Buffalo is. Then my partner was like, what about Chagrin Falls, which she and I both used to live in? And they said, well, that's not a real place. He said, well, it is. We can show you on Apple Maps. And so it just wound up, they said Wisconsin, like Happy Days. And I got that because when I pitched the show, I'd say, well, it's Happy Days in if they smoke pot, or it's it's friends in bell bottoms. It's like, and that's truly, I'm not way off on that there's a certain thing, like if you read Archie or Charlie Brown or whatever, and Friends and 70s and Happy Days, you could see the characters, uh, you know Betty and Veronica, Donna and Jackie, I mean Reggie, Danny. It was it's a template. So yeah, it was creating it was very much based on Red was my father, and everyone who knew him knew he was my father. And my father had been in Korea and the Pacific. So he was not like, oh, come here and tell me what your troubles are. Don't wipe those tears away. He wasn't that. He was just like red, and that was great because I was a kid that, I was Eric. I was hinky. I was all flustery. I didn't have a lot of self-esteem or confidence. And so, I'm going to stop and maybe you could ask a second question. Wait, I actually should talk. So we're going to have some of the guests, God willing, Zoom in. I I would like to kind of go through all the people that did guest spots on the show because there was a lot. Um, The Rock did his first acting job on 70s. Bruce Willis did the show. Betty White did the show. I mean, there's a lot of people that over the year, you'd make 200 episodes. And in the beginning, Fox was like, we need guest stars. And I said, great. And I got Paul Anka, Lyle Wagner, Charo. And they're like, what are you doing? I go, it's the 70s. And they said, well, those names, I don't know. Don't you have? And I said, look, Tom Hanks did the Naked Truth. It wasn't even a bump in the ratings.
Mhm.
So I really wanted to get people on there that I sort of was a little kid watching on TV, and that's what we did. Billy D. Williams was on the show. Just I love those people, the nostalgia. And for kids, it's like, well, I don't know who that is, but he or she is good. And for the parents who were in their 40s at the time are like, oh wow, look, there's Charo. Haven't seen her since Merv Griffin. Uh, so, and she was wonderful, and she looked exactly the same,
Huh.
you know. So yeah, so I'd like to go through the guest stars, and I would like to take questions for a while. We're going to have that. If anybody, I'm assuming it's going to be all Dunkirk Fredonia people,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they have a lot of people don't even know that I'm from here or that I did the show, you know. Like I was in oh God, Off the Hook, the fish place down on the
Yes.
pier,
Hmm.
and Kelly and Shelby are there, and the chef, the cook, he's like probably 20 something, has no idea that I'm from Dunkirk, that the guy who wrote that show is from Dunkirk. So it's kind of neat, you
Yeah, and
know.
I actually think it is kind of neat to tell you the truth. Dunkirk doesn't get a lot of play, and I understand that a lot of the episodes revolved around things that happened to you when you were in Dunkirk High
Yeah,
School and a bunch of your friends and all of that stuff. I mean, that's sort of common knowledge, but it's not really kind of out there, if you know what I mean.
yeah. And I have to, really, I think if you look at the show, and it's a love letter to Dunkirk and Fredonia. I'm so grateful to have grown up here. Uh, and in that time period, though, you know, we were allowed freedom, and I don't, and there wasn't we came in when the sun went down when we were kids, and it was just a very different time. And sure, there was tough stuff, but it's still, I look back on it. Maybe I'm romanticizing it, but it certainly felt idyllic to me, especially with all the woods and the outdoors, and even the winters. I delivered the Courier Express through the blizzard of '76. Not to
Mhm.
brag, but those papers got there.
Good for you. Yeah, I understand you're bringing a friend of yours too in to do sort of like an interview, as it were, as if it was a late night TV show. Rich Schneider, he's a pretty good comedian.
Rich Scheidner. Yeah,
Scheidner, thank
he's
you.
Scheidner. Yeah, everybody thinks Schneider because of that other guy, but it's Scheidner, and great comedian, been on Letterman and the Tonight Show many times, and one of my best friends. He's sort of a professor of comedy. Um, he puts out a lot of content on Instagram about the history of comedy, you know, and very inside stories that really only comedians know, you know, and great stories. And so, and he talks about some of he loves to talk about the legends. He talks about Mark Twain too, the first comedian, potentially. Artemis, yeah, there was another, God, how can I forget his last name? Artemis, who invented stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy is an American art form. Uh, other countries can say, blues and stand-up comedy are the two American art forms that, uh, they're pretty tremendous when you think about the joy that you get from both of them. So he's going to be interviewing me. I'm probably going to give him all the questions so he doesn't blindside me with something. When did you go through? What year were you going through puberty? Hey, that's not on the
It's not on the list.
cards. That's not on the cards. Can I say puberty time? I don't even know
Yeah,
if I can.
yeah. No, you can say puberty. That's okay. That's fine. We're good with that. So listen, let me talk a little bit about I'm very interested with, that 70s show. Nothing runs for, 8 seasons without being pretty popular.
Yeah.
But it ended, and there's a span of time, obviously, where you finished writing that show. You wrote something called that 80s show, that 90s show, so on and so forth. None of them really took. What has led you from, the end of that show? Because that must be something that's you have to make adjustments to what you're doing today.
Well, I have to clarify.
Okay.
Uh, I wrote the pilot of that 80s show, but I didn't work on it. I kind of set them off to do whatever they wanted to do, but I was against that idea. And the only reason I did that is because Sandy Grushow, who was the president of Fox at that time, he said, "Well, you're doing Happy Days, so we want to take Mila Kunis and Laura Prepon and spin them off and make Laverne and Shirley." And I said no. I said, "There's no way I can do that," because they were already so important to the program. And it's a bird in the hand. I mean, we knew what that show was, and
Mhm.
I think we'd already syndicated because we'd gotten to 100. I think at that point that was happening. So he said, uh, "Oh, okay, it'll be that 80s show." And I, I mean, I know that works sometimes, but this wasn't SVU where you're going to bring all these things. I just didn't see it working. So Fox did that 80s show. I told him it was a terrible idea, especially to call it that, because it's like you're putting it up against something that's much established by them. And then that 90s show, not only did I had nothing to do with it, and I just stayed home and got checks. So they didn't hire me, and that was fine with me. I had told them forever, because technically, well, it's a reboot. It's like, it's not a reboot. It's it's a bad idea.
Mhm.
So, you know, and I knew the showrunner who was great and had been on 70s, and we'd worked on Third Rock together because I did Third Rock from the Sun.
Mhm.
And Greg Metler is tremendous, brilliant writer, brilliant showrunner. But even the greatest actors, directors, and writers, you know, they drop a turd in the punch bowl sometimes. There's nothing you can do. You know, the problem is the showrunner is the coach of the team.
Mhm.
Team has a bad year. They go, are you going to fire the running back? How about the wide receiver? Nope, the coach. So
Mhm.
they fire the coach thinking, you know. So anyway, it's like sometimes the best laid plans not going to happen. So yeah, I didn't really have anything to do with either of those shows. And when 70s was over, I kind of dropped out. I moved up to Ojai, which is near Santa Barbara. I bought 100 acres of land. I built a horse ranch. I put a house on it. And well, I built a ranch truly because I bred and raised horses, but I also raised cattle. And I had pygmy goats. I had 6 dogs. Like it was pretty nice.
Mhm.
It was a lot like Dunkirk, where I could be outdoors. There's no, there's no concrete. There's good restaurants that you go to consistently. And, I loved it, but at some point, without again not getting into it, things happen on a ranch that are pretty heartbreaking.
Mhm.
And I finally was like, you know what? I'm gonna move back to Burbank and be a writer. So that's what I did. I did like my friends created a show. Two of my friends, uh, Chris Peterson and Brian Moore, who are brilliant writers. They were on 70s the entire run. And they created a show on Disney called Lab Rats, which I help them with. The New York Times wrote about lab rats. They said this is the most subversive, bizarre thing that Disney could ever do. Anyway, Lab Rats I thought was a really interesting, great show. A lot of fun to work on. Trying to sneak things past Disney that
Mhm.
are inappropriate. That's a lot of fun. And I was just a consultant on it, but it was good to get my hand back into comedy. And so I did that for a while. And then I'm not going to say working for Disney sent me into rehab, but it didn't help.
Uh,
So I also did that for a while. And then I just sort of found my joy for writing again, and I found my love of it. And I've written a lot of things in the last few years that I kind of really like because I'm not writing for other people or for a check anymore. I'm writing for myself and hoping they buy it. And if they don't, that's okay. The script itself is the reward. It's not really at this point in my life, it's not really about it getting on the air being sold, which I would like, but it's more about getting the story out of your head.
yeah.
I'm very
Hmm.
happy, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's and it's nice to have you back in Dunkirk, kind of.
yeah,
I'm going to ask you one more question, only because it fascinated me in terms of watching some episodes of that '70s show and reliving that show for a little bit while I was trying to get some formulate what I would like to ask you, and that's a concept of the circle. I found that very,
yeah.
very interesting in the way it was filmed, and all of that kind of stuff. Where did that come from? Because I thought that was the most interesting aspect of the whole show.
We had to come up with something. Um, you know, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. So uh Quentin Tarantino had a thing in Reservoir Dogs. He went around the outside of the table with the camera. And Fox was like, "You will never show a joint on this show." So that's and I can appreciate just my opinion, but it's a lot harder to be funny on network television than it is to be on HBO or when you could say anything. Larry David is a genius. However, you're not going to do that on network television, you
Mhm.
know? And so um, I remembered that Quentin Tarantino shot and I thought, okay, we put them in a circle and you have to put up a fourth, you have to block, it's a room. So it's a single camera. And Batts was the camera operator, and he sat in between, in the middle of the four chairs, because initially it was always Fez, uh, Eric, Hyde, and Kelso.
Mhm.
Initially, it was
Mhm.
always the four of them getting high.
Right.
Eventually, Red got high off brownies and got into the circle. You know? So,
Right.
so we had to put up that wall because I had to smoke the room up.
Uh-huh.
Not that any look, you gotta bake yourself in a car with like six joints to get the amount of smoke we had. And
There was always that lingering cloud.
absolutely. So the camera was one step ahead of what you knew was the joint, even though there was no joint. I faked it. They're not.
Right.
So the camera was either one step behind or one step ahead of the joint, whether people knew that or not. And so, but those kids, it was amazing because some of those scenes were really long.
Mhm.
And the Wilmer, Ashton, and Topher had never really acted before,
Mhm.
which was great because I wanted people to buy into it. And if you have famous people, people don't really buy into it. And so I was very happy that that was who we cast. Were a lot of unknowns. Donna, Laura Prepon, she was like a model in Jersey, and I wanted Donna to be. They're like, well, what's Donna? Who is she? I said, well, she's sort of based on a few girlfriends I had in Dunkirk. And if you're gonna say, well, who is she? Well, she's Lauren Bacall. You know,
Right.
I said, I want a redhead who's like Lauren Bacall. And Laura was like, that's what she was to me. She had the voice, she had the whole thing, she had the dry sense of humor. You didn't always know if she was joking or not.
Right.
And I just loved her. So So it was like the circle eventually opened up for everybody. And in the pilot, Ashton laughed. And on television, you're like, we can't laugh. And it's like, and I thought they're high and they're teenagers. Why can't they laugh? So that was the very first episode. I left it in the edit. I edited it in. But those kids had to learn all those lines because I couldn't cut. I couldn't cut in those scenes. If
Ah,
you'll see, it's a continuous shot.
yes.
Not as long as Martin Scorsese's or Touch of Evil, but it's a continuous shot.
Yes.
And I really got mad a few years into it when they brought in a new editor. I had one of the greatest editors, Vince, old timer. They bring in a new editor, and he goes, "I know how to cut between the shots." And now the network and Tom and everybody's like, "Oh, great, because we can pick and choose." And I was like, "That's not what I want,"
Hmm.
because I always think of sitcoms as theater,
Right.
like single camera TV stuff is film, but television with a live audience is theater. And David Trainer was from Broadway. The director was from Broadway, and he was brilliant. And he was 6'4", so those kids are going to look up to him no matter what. But he also taught me so much about how to do this because I'd never run a show before. I'm like in my early 30s. He just taught. I had the greatest department heads you could possibly have because they're from Carson Werner. I didn't have to micromanage people. I had to trust them and give it over to them and then do the thing I did, which was write, edit, and watch run-throughs. I didn't even talk to the actors about performances. I would talk to David. He would talk to them.
Wow.
I never wanted to talk to them because I didn't want to confuse them with myself and David telling them things.
Right.
Even if we're on the same page. Always wanted David to do the acting thing because he was a director and I wasn't. I was a writer and a producer and a showrunner, but I was not a director.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I really appreciate it. And Mark, I'm sure you're going to have a whole bunch of interesting stories when you come to the Opera House. So listen, thanks for your time. I don't know, after
Well, that
talking
was
to
like 3 questions. Thanks.
well, the best interviews I ever have are when I shut up and people talk. So,
Okay. Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
okay.
When they freeze, it's probably pretty bad.
Yeah. That's probably true, So, but I can tell you this, man, after this little amount of time I've spent with you here on the interview, I'm gonna have to see the next time you get to Off the Hook and see if I can meet you there. Because
Okay.
I gotta
That's a plug for them. They give me free food when I go in. If I mention every time I mention Off the Hook, I get a free meal. So Off the Hook is really, you got to see Off the Hook.
Yes, Off the Hook is great. All right, Mark, thank you for your time. Looking forward to seeing you at the Opera House. I appreciate everything you've given to the podcast. Lots of fun. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom.
From Dunkirk to Point Place, Wisconsin, a conversation with Mark Brazill will take place at the 1891 Fredonia Opera House on Saturday, August 1st at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are $25 for adults, $23 for members, and $10 for students. You can get your tickets by calling the box office at 716-679-1891 or by going online at www.fredopera.org/tickets. Some other events quickly worth noting. The Cinema Series July movies include The Breadwinner, July 11th and 14th, Power Ballad, July 18th and 21st, and Disclosure Day, July 25th and 28th. Films are screened on Saturdays and Tuesdays beginning at 7:30 p.m., with ticket prices at $7 for adults, $6.50 for members, and $5 for students, available at the door only the night of the screening. Check the Opera House website for more information on this upcoming July cinema series. Also, check out Main Street Studios' production of the musical Big Fish, running July 23rd, 24th, 25th, 30th, and August 1st at 7:30 p.m., with a matinee July 25th at 2 p.m. Click the Main Street Studio website link at the bottom of the show notes, or visit www.mainstreetstudios.org for more information and to buy tickets. Over at the Lakeshore Center for the Arts in Westfield, a production of D.L. Coburn's 1978 Pulitzer Prize-winning play, The Gin Game, featuring local actors Tina Rausa as Fanzia Dorsey and yours truly as Weller Martin, will be presented the weekends of July 17th and 24th. I sat down with the director of the show, Buffalo's David Oliver, to talk about the play, the production, and a little about his own work as a theater artist. David Oliver, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming and letting me do this interview with you. I much appreciate it.
Oh, of course, my pleasure.
Oh, great. Now obviously it's a little odd because I'm one of the actors in the show. You're the director. I don't often get to interview my director, so we'll try and keep it as mellow as we possibly can. But
Okay.
I think the first thing I want to do is sort of get your take on the show. You might want to give a little plot synopsis if you want to, but actually what I'm really more interested in how you got involved in the project. Where did this all spring from?
Well, okay. It actually sprang from Christina Rausa and I wanting to work together. I think we talked about a few things and this came up. I had in my mind that if you have two really good older actors, then you do the play The Gin Game. Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy did it in New York and in London, which I had a pleasure of seeing, and they were phenomenal. It's very much an actor's piece, but it also has this quality of and everybody can relate to it, it seems to me, because these characters live in their emotional past, and I think we all do at some point in our lives. But it's about two elderly people that meet in a rest home or facility, and they become friends, and they much needed because they haven't been getting along really with anybody else, and they're dealing with the realities of old age and all that goes with that. But it centers around a gin game. And out of that gin game, as they continue to play it through both acts of the play, it expresses more and more about certain elements in their lives. So they go through changes, not all pleasant, but they also become friends. So there's a lot of stake in the action for the characters.
You've described the play actually in a way to both Tina and myself as actors as the gin game being something of a metaphor for life. Is there any way that you can expand on that a little bit?
I think that's true. And it's not so much about a philosophy of why we play games, but we all latch on to things emotionally. Maybe out of, because of good memories from the past, or it was something that we were good at. That's a big one. So, as you get older, you give up more and more. I don't want to say too much about what happens in the play, but the game does definitely become a metaphor for life. The ups and downs of what you can control and what you can't. We all have to deal with that at some point. So it's a very interesting reflection on all of those elements that are true to life, and I feel has something to say.
I found in doing the role of Weller Martin that one of the interesting things that I've discovered is this dichotomy between talent and luck. Because Weller talks a couple of times about how gin is not just a game of pure luck. There's some strategy in it and so on and so forth. But when you come right down to it, if you don't get the cards, you don't get the cards. How do you see that as well in terms of the way it manifests itself in the destinies of the characters?
Like I said, I do think that we invest a lot in the things that we do well, and because you lose so much along the way, I think those things deepen, so it can become an even greater focus in when you're older of things you're trying to hang on to.
Well, I'm pretty interested in the luck aspect of it, actually.
Yeah, the luck.
Because a lot of us, talk about we try to
Right.
plan our lives and so on, but there's so much luck involved in what happens to us too.
Yeah, and there is with everything, whether we, like to admit it or not. And the thing is that again, we're all in the same boat, because what is luck? What can you say? How do you define a series of incidents that are out of your control? We don't know how to deal with that, I don't think. You know when it happens. I mean, I mentioned before I had a winning streak in Vegas once. Oh my God. Well, I felt like a god. It was ridiculous because I had all this adrenaline and all this. And it was luck, just a run. What is a run in gambling but luck?
I don't know that there's much skill in the one-armed bandit. You just got to pull the damn lever.
No, I didn't feel like a king of gambling after that. I wasn't on the crap table or anything. Anyway, we're getting into gambling here, but just again, really that metaphor of what we put into something like a game can have a lot more meaning than you would think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm discovering that just trying to get to the role. Let's talk just a little bit, if we may, about you and your career. You've been in Buffalo for quite some time, but you have been a world traveler. You've done theater in so many places. You've spent time in England and so on and so forth. Can you talk just a little bit about your own career and how you see it after all these years, just to give the listeners a little background about where you've been and what you've done?
Yeah, sure. I auditioned for some of the British drama schools in the late 70s, and Lambda, which is fairly well known, I think, and the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. There's very little music, by the way. It's not a music school, but it's one of the classical training institutions in England. The Royal Academy, RADA, is another one. And I really wanted to go. I was a strange child. I was into Orson Welles when I was 11. I mean, I just loved the grandeur and the what you could do with acting. So I'm very glad I went, and it was particularly good vocal training. A lot of physical work, classes that involved a variety of different physicalities and vocal training was just invaluable. I've used it my whole life. So that was a great thing, and I stayed in England because my parents are originally from there, so I was able to stay and did some work there then, came back to New York and didn't work really in New York. I ended up being a wardrobe dresser for 20 years.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, of course I was a waiter for a certain length of time, but so I dressed a lot of Broadway shows over 20 years, thank God. Or I had no pension. Because I don't know what else would have given me a pension that hadn't come along. So it was a good, if I couldn't be an actor all the time, at least I could do that and still be in theater. So I have been in show business my whole adult life. And then, I've been interested in directing all along, but it's really, really about 15, closer to 20 years ago that I started getting deeper into it with Torn Space Theater, with Road Less Traveled Theater. Initially, I did a lot of work with them, so I kind of really got more developed in my directing, and that's what it's been. I have acted occasionally, but it's been a while. It's been 5 years, and I doubt I could remember an entire script.
It happens to us all. You even have your own theater company, Revelation Theater. What's that about?
Yeah, that's about trying to produce things that nobody else is likely to produce. We did. I've gotten a grant from a NISCA grant. When we started with a movement piece, it was kind of based on the themes of COVID. Mm-hmm. So we rehearsed it, created it during that COVID period, and how people were living with each other. Really, that's what it was expressing. So I really like that kind of work. I love physical theater, but we've also done plays, of course. I produced a play about a black boxer at the Paul Robeson Theater, and an Amelia Earhart show that a friend of mine has been doing for a number of years, that she devised herself on an apparatus. She's an aerial artist, so she was up on this thing. So yeah, I'm always looking for different, unusual things, and physical theater, like I said, is a big draw for me.
Is there something in your whole background or career or anything that sparked you and said, wow, that is so inspiring. I want to go in that direction? Something you saw, a person you met, something along those lines?
It had to do with being so, you hear this from actors, being so painfully shy when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, always, my parents they were big party givers. They weren't big boozers, but they were big party givers. So I would always have to time when I entered that room. But I discovered that if I entertained them, I was in control.
Oh.
Very important lesson. And it just happened naturally. I mean, this was happening before I was, when I was a kid, a little kid. So, like I said, I mean, I used to watch the Dean Martin show, right? Okay.
Right.
And Orson Welles would appear on the Dean Martin show, and he would do a Shakespearean monologue. I was totally into it. Things like that never happen anymore. I mean, it's all changed so much. But so there was always that draw to storytelling. And I think that's the main point, storytelling. It becomes something you can't stop doing. I mean, we all do it, but I mean to do it in an organized way as theater, allows, is it for me. I mean,
well, the story of Gin Game must be one that you've really sort of taken to, because for once I'm working with somebody who's driving from Buffalo down to Westfield instead of me driving from Dunkirk.
It's my big sacrifice. I've discovered how much I can phase out. I mean, it's a beautiful drive, really. If I never see another truck again, I'll be. And I've done cross-country trips, but I don't know if I can do any more.
Listen, David Oliver, director of the Gin Game at the Lakeshore Center for the Arts in Westfield. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. And it's been a blast so far working with you. You haven't given me a note yet that I haven't thought was accurate or wonderful or nice to take. So it's good. This is my first time working with you after all these years. So
after all
that's
these
something
years.
right there,
Yeah. No. Okay, good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The Gin Game will run for 2 weekends, July 17th through 19th and 24th through 26th. Performances on Friday and Saturday start at 7:30 p.m., while the Sunday matinees begin at 2 p.m. Tickets are $20 general admission and can be purchased at the Lakeshore Center for the Arts website by clicking on the link below. Hope to see you there. And that's it for this summer Mini-2 edition of Notes from the Aisle Seat. My thanks to Mark Brazill and David Oliver for being my guests. The final mini edition will be available on August 12th, 2026. I'm Tom Laughlin, and as always, stay safe out there and be kind to one another.